Welcome to King's March.
Hello everyone, so today we're going to be going through my Flicker Strike build, Trickster, and obviously two things straight off the bat which I'm going to say is that I'm going to be going through two builds with you. Now, one of them is my build and one of them is a secondary build which is a hell of a lot tankier, but you lose a lot of damage, so I'm going to go into that later. But it's up to you which variant you want to go for. Me personally, I would rather go with my version because it does a lot more damage and it is very tanky. But either build, depending on which one you go for, neither of these are cheap. Okay, first of all, the Doryani variant that I'm going to be doing today, that I'm going to run through with you, you are running with what's called 200% lightning resistance, but it's negative. It's not positive, it's a negative lightning resistance, which is the cap. Now, if you look at my character here, if I go into my stats sheet, hold on one second, we go to there. See the lightning res here, you see it's at 200%. Now you're probably looking at my cold resistance there and thinking, why is it only 73? That's because my flasks are always up. So, and that gives me an additional 40. Now I am trying to squeeze out an extra couple of percent from somewhere, but it's a work in progress. But for the time being, as soon as I start killing stuff, I instantly have these charges on, and it's constantly on through the entire map, so I don't need to worry about dropping in resistance. So this is entirely obviously up to you. If you want to obviously make sure that you are cold res capped, that's your call. You can do that if you want, but I know that I'm comfortable with the fact that as soon as this flask pops, I've got an extra 40 on top. So if I just pop flask 2, it then jumps to 84%, so then I'm absolutely fine. But that flask is constantly on, so no worries. Now, the second build that I'm going to be showing you is going to be utilizing a completely different chest. So the build that we are using uses Doryani's prototype. Now what this does is lightning resistance. What your lightning resistance is equal to all the lightning resistance of the monsters that are nearby you. So if you have negative 200 and you go close to an enemy, that enemy now has negative 200 lightning damage. Now, as the chest says here, you deal no non-lightning damage. So that means that you don't do physical, you don't do chaos, you don't do cold, you don't do fire. You physically just do lightning, nothing else. So you cannot run this build with original sin because it does not change it. So don't think if you've got an original sin you can just change it all to chaos, because it doesn't work. One of my buddies has tried it, he was still doing lightning damage with it equipped. Now with this chest, it is very important that you get to negative 200 lightning resistance to do the max amount of damage on your build. If you do not hit that negative 200, you are going to be losing a lot of damage. Okay, now this build, the second build by the way, uses a necrotic armor, which is a rare chest piece, and obviously it is a hell of a lot tankier, but for the price budget it is multiple mirrors to put that build together. So if you don't have that type of budget, then it's entirely up to you which variant you would like to go for. Now the first version that I'm going to show you here does cost around about 300 to 400 divines, and that is including the mage blood. So if you already have the mage blood, then it will only be around about 200 divines on top of that. If you have that to one side and you have that stashed away, then you should be good to go. Now, the build is not cheap, as I said, in any stretch of the imagination, and I'd just like to highlight a quick few items, obviously, that I'm going to go through, which are the most expensive things on the build first. What I would like to say, though, is for anyone who has watched my Ice Nova of Frostbolts build, thank you. The praise has been phenomenal on the comments. There's been a ton of people that have been saying that the build was amazing, that they'd smashed all tier 17s, they'd done all Uber content, and a good chunk of people have said that they've managed to switch from Zizzarin's version and Garatha's version, and mine was better. So thank you, guys. I appreciate it. The views are like nearly 80,000. That is the top video on my channel, so thank you, guys. If you are not subscribed and you have enjoyed that build and you are looking forward to this build, then throw us a subscribe, guys. It will greatly appreciate it, and it'll help grow the channel to the size that I'm wanting it to be. Alright, and obviously if this build is good, or even if the Ice Nova build was good, share it with your buddies, share it with your friends. Alright, tell them that it's a good build, it's strong, alright, it does a good damage. So, with that being said, let's go through the most costly pieces on this build, just so you can kind of understand why it's so expensive. So the first thing that I'm going to say, and this is probably one of the most expensive items in the entire build, that is the Light of Meaning jewel. Now this jewel, at the moment, if it was obviously to do a quick price check on it, was the last time that I checked it, it was around about 30 odd divines. Let me just get the tool running, because the tool is currently not running. And it's currently 57 to 58 divine for this jewel. That's just for one jewel, okay? The reason why is because it gives you 3% increased energy shield per notable, or per passive skill that you have allocated. So this gives 3%, this gives 3%, this gives 3%. Every single point you have allocated within that circle gives you 3% energy shield. And seeing as the build is based upon energy shield and your damage is based upon your energy shield, that is why this jewel is so much, because there is a lot of people that are using it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the weapon. So the sword, if you wanted an ephemeral edge just on its own with nothing else on it, you're probably talking 10 chaos maximum. Now if you wanted one with max rolled energy shield with no corruption, then it's 30 chaos, but you do need the corruption for it to function properly and for it to do the most amount of damage, and that is Resolute Technique. As soon as you put Resolute Technique on it, the price then jumps to 25-30 divine. Now I have an enchant on mine for attack speed. If you add that on top, we're now in the 40 divines. However, that is the next corruption I got was increased physical damage, which I don't really want because I don't do physical damage. Now I appreciate the physical damage is possibly being converted into lightning damage, but again, it's not the point. You want, for the best in slot, you want melee hits have a chance to fortify. That is your best mod, which at the moment I think is around about 100 divine if you want that. Next thing is I am running with a Forbidden Flame and a Forbidden Flesh setup. So down here we are running with 1 step ahead and 1 step ahead. Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because it does help you with a bit more attack speed, but what it also does is it means that you are then resistant to any form of chill. You don't get slowed, and obviously you don't get petrified, things like that. So that does help as well. Now they in themselves cost 30 divine each duel, so there's 60 divine, there's 50 odd divine, and the weapon's 30 divine. So you can kind of see where the cost is coming from, because we've not even got to the other pieces of gear yet. The next thing that we are running with is a melding, which I think is here. Yeah, melding of the flesh. Now to get a max rolled one like this, it's around about 17 divine as well. The melding helps with increasing your maximum res, so we are getting it around about 84%. So you can get a jewel that has on it increased maximum energy shield and +2 to maximum cold resistance. Now if you get that, if you had 2 of those, when you pop your flask, you would jump from 84, you would go for 86, then you jump to 88. So if you wanted to go for that, you can do. Now if you're running a Mage Blood, you can potentially push that to 90, because the increased effect of the maximum cold resistance may push you there. Now my build currently, I don't have a Mage Blood just because I've spent all my money on trying to get everything else min-maxed. The next thing that I need to upgrade is a Mage Blood, so I am working towards it, so don't worry, it is next on the agenda to obviously upgrade. Okay, it's very expensive at the moment. I think it's about 260 divine, I think, at the moment. Now the next thing that you want to try and go for is a Watcher's Eye. Now the Watcher's Eye that I'm currently using has on it chance to block spell damage while affected by discipline. Now we are affected by discipline, and the block spell damage helps you get block capped, and penetrate lightning resistance while affected by wrath. That obviously is amazing because we are using wrath and we are penetrating. Now bearing in mind their resistances are going to be negative 200 anyway, and then we're penetrating it even further, everybody just melts. Okay, so that's that. Next thing that's obviously quite essential for the build that is expensive is Enlighten. Now Enlighten, the last time that I checked was, let me check it, 20 divine. So yeah, it's quite expensive. So that's obviously they're like the majority of the main things. The other thing is you do want a maxed rolled, if you can, Voices of the Storm, just because you want to try and get all of the attributes, and the lightning damage obviously is maxed roll anyway, but you want to try and get as much in the increased mana as possible. Now I obviously want to buy an upgrade of this soon because I want to try and get the attribute roll to be 15 if I can, and then I want it to be catalysts as well. So that's one of the next thing that's on my agenda to upgrade, but it's only cheap, 67 divine. It's not that bad. Probably one of the most expensive things as well, which is essential, is the mirrored ring. Now this is how you are getting your negative 200 lightning resistance. You are basically hoping that you get a mirrored ring from the reflective mists, but it needs to have negative mod for lightning resistance, and all of the other mods need to be good enough that they don't brick your build, because there are some that will brick it. So for example, this one is, I managed to steal this one. First of all, 103 intelligence is amazing. If you can get one with that, amazing, because of the intelligence gives us more energy shield. Crit strike multi, I don't do crits, so I don't really care about that. Okay, evasion is being turned into armor. It's awesome, that is brilliant. Minus 129 life, couldn't care less. I'm CI, does not affect me. Minus lightning resistance, you need. The bad one, I would say that the only bad one that's on this ring is the fact that my skills cost an additional 13 mana, but it does not affect me at the moment because I'm running with 101, and I am gaining mana back when I obviously kill enemies, and obviously I kind of do a bit of a leech off them as well. So there is no issues in terms of mana, so I'm not gonna run out. But that is important. If you can get this on a ruby ring because you need the fire resistance, then that is a bonus. Okay, if not, try and get it on something else, not one with life and not one with any lightning resistance. If you get positive lightning resistance anywhere on the build, it will break your damage. So do not get positive lightning resistance anywhere on the build. Okay, that is essential. Next thing, which I don't have at the moment, is you need awakened multi-strike to be doing the maximum amount of damage. Now it's on my list, but at the moment awakened multi-strike nearly costs as much as a mage blood, so I'm toying up which is more important, mage blood, multi-strike. Mage blood, I think mage blood kind of wins there. So that's what I'm going for. Now if you already have a mage blood, you can always go and buy this. It's entirely up to you. The next thing is you do run with awakened elemental damage with attack support. Now I think this is quite cheap. When I bought it, it was only like 15 now. So it's 15 divine, but I did get a level 6. So it's not massively expensive. It's not as bad as multi-strike. And the last one is the Timeless Jewel. Now the Timeless Jewel runs with a lethal pride for the strength, because we need the strength, because we are a bit strength starved, because we are on this side of the tree, but we are using quite a few strength gems, so we need a lethal pride. We are doing it with the Rakiata, however it does not matter because we are not taking any keystones, so we're not taking this tempered by war. Okay, now with this timeless jewel, the most expensive one is the one that I've got, which you've got on it, which has got 5% chance to deal double damage, melee damage, increased strength, and 5% chance to deal double damage. So I've got 10% chance to deal double damage, 40% increased melee damage, and then I've got some more strength in there as well. Now, if you wanted to go full out 5% increased chance to do double damage on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nodes, you're probably talking around about 70 to 100 divine for that timeless jewel. I did see one on the market, but then it got snapped up within the hour. I didn't have enough money to buy it, otherwise I would have got it. But I do feel that the melee damage is a nice little bonus as well. Okay, with that being said, the whole build, like I said, focuses on the chest piece. Okay, now, which means that all nearby enemies, like I said earlier, have the same lightning resistance equal to you. All right, now if you're at negative 200, so is any enemies that you strike, so is the boss. Okay, so that is why your damage does quite a lot. Now you're probably wondering, how does that affect me against lightning damage, because you got negative 200. If you read the chest, armor also applies to lightning damage taken from hits. So my armor at the moment, when I have all the flasks popped, is at 52,900, and I am at 90% fizz mitigation when all the flasks are popped, which is literally as soon as I hit the first pack in a map, and it's then consistent all the way through the map. Once I have a mage blood, those figures will then jump up to around about 80,000, close to 90,000 armor, which is what you want to be going for. That means that your lightning damage taken is then negated by your armor. Now there's only two things that I have found that will hurt you, and that is the lightning spire rares. When they kind of spawn them like weird lightning spires all over the map, they hurt. And the harbinger ball lightning, that the big harbingers, the king harbingers, when the ones that they spawn, those balls that do like zap you with lightning damage, they hurt as well. But it's nothing that can't be negated, because you are leeching, because you are a trickster, so you are leeching energy shield. The build at the moment is leeching around about 2,000 energy shield with every single hit. So you hit 5 enemies, you've leeched back 10,000 energy shield. My energy shield at the moment is only 8,500, so I've already capped myself back to full. So as long as you're hitting enemies, you are leeching, and as long as you're leeching, you're doing damage because of the Ascendancy. Now that is really the basics of how the build runs and the most expensive parts. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through the skill tree, I'm going to go through the jewels, and then I'm going to go through the items, and then I'm going to go through the skill gems and the Ascendancy and the Pantheon. Okay, so let's go through them now. Now, first things first, I had a ton of comments on my build for Ice Nova where people were asking me, can you give me a leveling tree? Can you give me, what skill should I be leveling with? This build, do not try to level with it. 1, you will have a hard time. You will struggle. 2, in terms of the damage, it just won't be there. You won't be able to equip a negative lightning resistance ring until you're in the 70s, if not 80s. So do not try to level with this build. Level with something else. Level with Hollow Palm. Level with Smite. Smash through the axe. Get to level 80 odd. Then switch over to this. Do not try to do this. And if you put in the comments, can you give me a leveling guide? Just go on Google, YouTube, Smite Hollow Palm leveling guide, and someone will provide you with one. Because we are on the dex side of the tree, Smite works very well, because for every single dex that you get, you do more damage. Okay, Once you are re-rolling, you then want to be going north up this tree, and you want to be taking these intelligence nodes. You then want to pick up, I'm picking up trickery here. Now the reason I'm picking up is just for the increase, 20% flat increased damage, and it has some dex and intelligence. Potentially once I have my mage blood, I may take this out, but I need the dex right now, so I'm struggling. Carrying on, go in here, take the cold-hearted for the increased damage again and the mana regen. Then go down here, pick up a bit of the spell suppress, but you mainly want the increased maximum energy shield. Okay, then go up, pick up the energy shield mastery here, and we're taking this, which obviously gives us increased energy shield on kill, and we take the mastery, which provides us with increased evasion for every single intelligence, 5 intelligence that we have. So you want to be stacking intelligence, because then that converts evasion into armor, which I'll go through in a minute. So you want to go up here and you want to take up the lightning cluster, and you want to take the mastery for physical damage converted to lightning damage. Now you are already doing all lightning damage, but your fizz that you have is not being converted, so you need to convert some of it. This will do a little bit more damage. You're then picking up Ghost Reaver, which helps that you then leech. Your leech is then doubled, but you cannot recharge energy shield, so bear that in mind. You cannot recharge energy shield. You have to be hitting an enemy to leech, but your leech is amazing. Then you come down here and you pick up the energy shield here, and you pick up increased energy shield from the helmet, 100%. So you want to try and get as much energy shield on the helmet as possible, because then it will be doubled. Then you're going up here, you're picking up CI, and you are then picking up the reservation cluster here, and you are then taking auras from your skills, have a 10% increased effect on you. You are then going south, you're picking up the dual socket, which is where you would socket your lethal pride, and you would then pick up the frenzy, because we are stacking frenzy charges. This build runs with 8 frenzy charges. We are then coming down here, and we are then picking up the mark cluster here, and we're putting 10% chance to gain frenzy charge when you hit a marked enemy. Now every single enemy that you hit, you will mark them, so for that reason you are then generating frenzy charges constantly. So there is no frenzy charge generation in the gems, you have to do it from here. So there's 10% there, and there's 8% further down, which I'll show you in a minute. You are then taking the cluster here, and we are then going to be taking a large cluster duel with prodigious defense, which gives you spell block, it gives you attack damage when you are holding a shield, and more chance to block attack damage, which I'll go through with you in a minute. You are stacking a lot of block attack damage because you are converting that to spell block, which I'll show you in a minute. Carrying on, feed the fury, and you are then taking martial prowess. Now if you have the points, you can actually take it, because the attack speed, the attack damage, and the attack damage with ailments from attack skills, all of that is obviously very helpful for the build. The dual sockets that I've got here is Storm Shroud, which I'll go through with you in a minute, and Melding of the Flesh, which I've already showed you. Down here we have a Forbidden Flame. It doesn't matter where you put the jewels, you can put them wherever you want for the Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh, melding, doesn't matter, as long as they go either in the cluster or in this socket or in the cluster down here. Okay, save this one down here for the energy shield. You are then coming down here, picking up the other dual socket and the frenzy charges. You're then coming further down and you're picking up the sword mastery here for the 20% chance to gain a frenzy charge when you block attack damage. Now you are going to be max blocked, so every time you block you could potentially gain a frenzy charge. On top of that, so that's 20% and 10%, then you then add on another 8% chance to gain a frenzy charge when you hit a unique enemy. So for that reason you are stacking your frenzy charge generation so you don't run out. From here you're then going up this way and coming down, and you are taking Precise Technique. Now for this reason you are taking 40% more attack damage, and you never deal critical strikes. So the reason why we're doing this is because of the weapon. Because you're taking Resolute Technique, your hits cannot be evaded and never deal critical strikes. So because we're not doing crits, we may as well take this extra 40%. It's just an additive bonus. Come down here, you don't have to take this 30 intelligence if you don't need to, but I just took it for a bit more intelligence, bit more energy shield, a bit more damage. Coming down here, Cluster Jewel, we want to go for Feed the Fury, which gives you more damage while leeching, and damage leached as life. Now life we don't really need, it's more energy shield. Attack speed while leeching we want, and Martial Prowess, again, attack damage, attack speed we want. And the back one is Fuel the Fight, which is again more attack speed, attack damage is leached as mana, and increased damage while leeching. Now we are always leeching. In here is the Watcher's Eye in the build, and down here as well is the other Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh. We are then going across, and I will go through the tattoos in a minute. We are then going across, we're picking up the block mastery here, which then gives you more block, block, more block, and more block. And the mastery is 1% chance to block spell damage per 5% chance to block attack damage. So you are then trying to get both of them maxed out. Next one you are taking here is the melee damage one here, the attack mastery, where monsters cannot block your attack. So one of all, you're running with resolute technique, which means that they cannot evade them. This means that they cannot block them. So the monsters literally will get hit 100% of the time. They cannot evade and they cannot block it. This also does provide you with increased melee damage and a little bit more meters to your melee strike range, which helps with Flicker Strike, because then your enemies are obviously, you get more strike distance, so you can jump further. But there has to be 5 enemies that are nearby for that to happen. We're then taking here Iron Reflexes. Now what this does is this converts all of your evasion into armor. So the Dex provides no evasion, but any evasion that you do have is then converted into armor. Okay, that is why the build at the moment is running with around about 80,000 armor once you have your Mage Blood equipped. You're then running the Mana Mastery for the 12% increased mana reservation of skills. We're taking the Dual Socket for your Light of Meaning Jewel and the Frenzy Charge Point. We're then coming down here and we're picking up all the frenzy charges here, and we're picking up 3% increased damage per frenzy charge. We are running with 8 frenzy charges, so you do the maths. We're then picking up this entire shield cluster here because we are running with a shield, so this all provides you with more block, more increased damage, more attack speed, increased defenses. You recover life when you block. That is a dead mod, but we want it for the increased chance to block. More block, more block, more block. And the one in the middle is more chance to block attack damage for per 5% chance to block on your shield. Now the reason we're doing all of this block, 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 and the reason we are overcapping our block, as you can see here, the block chance on the left, we are currently 29% overcapped, is because this takes 10% off the maximum. So you go from 75 down to 65, but then it says you then gain 2% chance to block spell damage for every 1% that is overcapped. So at the moment we are 29% overcapped. If you double 29%, that is how much you are then gaining as spell block. Plus you're getting spell block from your other points on the tree and from your Watcher's Eye. It's all additive bonus and it all helps. Final thing we are then taking over here is the rage cluster here, and we are then taking that we then gain rage when we hit an enemy, and every rage grants 1% increased armor. So when you are at like quite high rage, you are potentially hitting 90 odd to 100,000 depending on when you pop your rage. Now I have it set as automation and I'll show you why, because it's very easy. The middle mastery that we're taking is nearby enemies are intimidated. Now if you hold Alt on this when you are actually in the game, it will actually tell you, because if you don't know what intimidated is, if you hold Alt over it in the bottom here, it does say there, intimidated enemies take 10% increased attack damage. So they take more attack damage when you are obviously in the game. Now as you can see, my tree is exactly the same as the tree, obviously other than the intelligence node. I put that on the POB just in case you need it. You don't need to take it if you don't want to. Okay, we're going to go through the tattoos now. Now the reason why is because every single one of these gives 3% increased maximum energy shield. Energy shield is converting into damage. The reason how it does that is from the weapon. Attacks with this weapon have added maximum lightning damage equal to 20% of the player's maximum energy shield. So the more energy shield you have, the more damage you do. So you're stacking energy shields. So you've got one there, one there, one there, one here, that one, that one, that one. Now this top one I took as 5% chance to shock, just because shock obviously increases damage taken by up to 50%. I didn't want to waste 20 tattoos getting shock. 5% is good enough. If you're hitting a boss that many times, they will trigger shock on them at some point. Carrying on down, obviously all these purple points here, we are obviously taking the tattoos, which is the tattoo of the Hinekora warrior. That's what gives you with the increased strength. Now, depending on how much dex you have and how much you need, and if you're running a mage blood, you may need to be careful with these. Now, I'm running the tattoo of let me try and do this. Tassilio Tide Shifter, I think that is. What it does, 10% chance to avoid being stunned. The last thing you want when you're running Flicker is to be stunned. So we've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I've got 60% so far. That is enough for me. I don't really get stunned. I'm going that fast and I'm hitting people that fast. 60% is enough for me. Potentially when I get the mage blood and I have a boost of dex, I may then use the rest of the tattoos, but it's all dependent on my attributes, on whether I can afford to. The other tattoo that I have down here is I do have one which has got cold resistance on there, just because I was lacking in cold resistance, and I could potentially take another one in cold resistance, but at the moment I am needing the dex. I am at 165, so I am struggling a little bit. Again, I don't have a mage blood, which, as you know, has a big chunk of dex on there, so once I have that, it will then help. Now, I've gone through all of the jewels so far. Obviously we've been through them all previously in terms of the cost, and obviously we've been through what they are, but here's an example of the 2%. Look, 2% maximum cold resist. I've got this one with corrupted blood immunity. That does help if you do want to go for that. It does help you with a bit more, and obviously I've got one on there, increased maximum energy shield as well, because that's a bonus. So what we're going to do now is I am going to go through the gems, and I will go through I'll go through the items first. So I'll go through them on my gear. So, Ephemeral Edge. Resolute Technique is a must. Second mod, Corruption mod, if you want to go for it. It's very expensive. Melee hits have a chance to fortify. One of the most important things on this though is you want to try and get a maximum roll of the increased maximum energy shield on here. Now if you can see, if I hold Alt, it does roll between 40 and 50. The more energy shield you have, the more damage you do. So try and get 50. This has 50, and it doesn't have a max roll on the increased physical damage, but we're not doing physical damage, so I'm not that bothered. Okay. In terms of the enchant attack speed, that is a bonus if you can get it on there. It's not essential, but it is a nice quality of life. Next thing I'm going to go to is the helmet. Now with the helmet, you want to just literally get as much energy shield as possible on it. I got one here that's got on it Aspect of the Crab. I can't use Aspect of the Crab because I don't have the mana reservation for it, but it was probably one of the nicest helmets that was online, that had over 500 energy shield, that also had on it 40/40 cold and fire resistance, which is what I needed. There was nothing else on the market that had this amount of energy shield. Now if you can craft one better than this, that could still get fire and cold on it and get your energy shield on it as well, then go ahead. In terms of the Eldritch Implicits, you want to be going for increased mana reservation efficiency and reduced mana cost of skills, so that Flicker doesn't cost as much. Carrying on to Voices of the Storm, this amulet basically provides you with increased lightning damage. It increases you with maximum mana, and as it says there, lightning damage with non-critical strikes is lucky. Now we're not critting, so that is perfect for us. Lucky basically means that when you hit an enemy, you will hit them with two different values. So if you hit them for 100 and then you hit them for 300, it will roll the higher roll, so it will hit them for 300, not the 100. Okay? So that's that, and you are then allocating anointing Tribal Fury. Tribal Fury is down here. Melee strikes deal splash damage to surrounding targets. So when you hit an enemy, it will then splash lightning damage onto all nearby enemies. Next one we're going for is the Shield, an Aegis Aurora. Again, you want to try and get as much armor and energy shield on this as possible, but you also want to try and go for a decent roll on the increased elemental damage with attack skills, because we are doing damage with an attack skill. So for that reason, that mod does help. I got a corruption one here with reduced extra damage taken from crits, just for a bit more survivability. You can potentially get one with +1 to gems if you really want, but the gems that you're running in here don't really need a +1, so it's a bit of a waste. If you want to go for, if you're missing block, you could always go for plus spell block if you can get one that's got spell block, or maybe more just chance to block, maybe overcap it more just to get that spell block up. Entirely up to you what you want to do. Now, next one is let's go for the chest. So for the chest, obviously you want to try and get as high roll as possible on the armor and the energy shield as possible. That's it. Don't worry about the life, because you CI. So you want to try and get that value as high as possible. Now, I managed to pick one up here which had 49% increased damage, just gives me a nice damage boost. The curse gems doesn't really affect it because I'm not running any curse gems in the chest. I just wanted it for the increased damage, and it was the cheapest one that I could find, and it has a decent roll on the armor and the energy shield. We are now running with a Chevron's Revelation Ring. Now, I picked this one up with the Wrath has increased aura effect on there. So what that does is it does give you more lightning damage. If you want to run it just basic with the energy shield implicit, you can do. So you do lose, you lose a bit of damage because you lose your energy shield, but then you gain damage because Wrath has a 20% increase or 18% increased effect. So you're losing damage, then gaining more damage. So don't worry about that. Okay. The rest of the gear then is literally just rare, apart from the belt. The belt that you would want to be running is a Mage Blood. Now I'm running with a Crystal Belt. For anyone who knows, Crystal Belt has a nice maximum energy shield roll on there. Obviously, as you can see on there, I've got 96 maximum energy shield, I've got resistances, I've got flat energy shield, and I've got more armor and evasion. It's probably the best thing that I could pick up just for more energy shield. Now I know that I am going to lose some energy shield when I remove this and put on a Mage Blood, but I'm just going to have to just accept it. Finally, the gloves, we are running with a energy shield, again resistances, fire and cold. Have you noticed there's no lightning resistance on any of this gear? Again, flat energy shield, and it's got some life on there, which I'm not bothered about. I just wanted it for the 200 energy shield. You do want to get some Warlock gloves. Warlock gloves, I believe, have got the highest roll of energy shield on them. They're the new bases that have been added in this league. Carrying on, the non-Val strike skills target one additional nearby enemy nearby. Ideally, you want to try and go for one that has two. Now, I bought these the other day. These are the best in slot gloves. These are what you want to do. Now, I can't put these on at the moment until I have a Mage Blood. This is what you want. You want 3% increased damage per 100 intelligence. So we're at about 300 intelligence at the moment. So that means we've got 9% flat increased damage. And non-Val strike skills target 2 additional nearby enemies. Now that mod cost me nearly 12 divine to roll it. I had to roll that myself. It was a pain in the ass with an Orb of Conflict and rolling the increased damage with exceptionals. Yeah, it was a pain. Then we've got increased energy shield. We have intelligence, which gives us more intelligence. That will then push me into the 400 category, which will then give me another 3% increased damage when I can put them on. 18% increased attack speed, which is massive for Flicker Strike. Energy shield, cold resistance, and then the main mod at the bottom here, increased damage while leeching. We are always leeching. That then gives you a flat buff of damage straight away. Now, I would be able to put these on, but not right now, so I'm running with these at the moment. This is obviously how I'm doing. The whole build is literally pinned together by this strength. As soon as I take these gloves off, everything breaks. So I know that when I get my Mage Blood, I'm going to try and get the highest roll of strength on there that I can, and then if need be, I'm just going to have to try and squeeze strength in somewhere else. But I'll deal with that when I get to it. And finally, boots. Again, fire, cold resistance. It's got intelligence on there because we're intelligence stacking. It's got movement speed on there, and it's got evasion, and it's got energy shield, which is a bonus. Again, they're not best in slot. I could do better than that, but at the moment I can't do much until I have a Mage Blood running. Once I have a Mage Blood running, then I can start to play around with the boots and maybe play around with the amulet and things like that. So that is the items. What we'll do now is we'll go through the skill gems. Now these skill gems, there are some which are mandatory, then there are some that are not. So I'll run through them. So the mandatory 6-link is Flicker Strike, Multi-Strike, as you know, because it repeats, Awakened Elemental Damage with attacks. This means as well that you can do Ellie Reflect maps as long as you don't Leap Slam into a pack of mobs, which I keep doing, because Leap Slam does lightning damage, but Leap Slam is not linked to elemental damage with attack skills. So just be careful, because I've done that a few times. I think if I just type in here /deaths, I've died 183 times. If I do /kills, yeah, I've done 500,000 monsters. I would say probably 80 of them deaths has been from running Ellie Reflect maps and Leap Slamming into a pack and then killing me because of the Reflect. So if you are going to run Ellie Reflect maps, just be careful. You are then running with Volatility support, which provides you with more minimum and maximum attack damage and increased damage. We're running with Energy Leech, which gives us more energy shield leeching, and we are doing more damage while we're leeching. If you notice, the whole build runs on leech. And finally, Close Combat, which provides us with more damage. Again, I could potentially run this as a level 21. I've just not bought it yet, so it's just a case of me just min-maxing a few things. That's the last thing that I need to just upgrade. Carrying on, and even then, if I upgrade that, I'll literally get 1% more melee damage, and that's it. Next thing is the aura, which is in the helmet, which we are running with an Enlighten. We're then running with Determination for a ton of armor. We're then running with Discipline for a Val. We are running with a Val Discipline. Now the reason why is because if you do get hit by anything, you can then hit Val Discipline there, and you'll then recharge your energy shield because you don't have any life. You can't run a life flask, so your only form of defense in terms of regenning is Val Discipline. And finally, Wrath, which obviously provides you with additional lightning damage. Running on to the weapons now, we are running with Haste, which is for more attack speed. Now with the Haste, I haven't got Haste turned on in the background here. I'm literally using it just for the Val Haste. So when you're running through a map and you want it to go faster, as soon as you gain the enough souls to pop it, just pop it, and you'll instantly gain 31% increased attack speed, which helps you fly through the map a lot faster. Linked with that is Mark on Hit, so whenever you hit a rare or unique enemy, you are then applying Warlord's Mark, which then means that you then cursed enemies grant you 2.95% leech when hit by attacks. You mana leech, and you get a chance to gain an endurance charge when you kill them, and you can potentially stun them, and you gain 10 rage when they are stunned. So there is a bit of rage generation in here as well. Carrying on to the shield, we're running with Sigil of Power. That is literally just for defensive purposes. So if you are running, let's say, a expedition, or if you're running a ritual and you're in a circle, you just pop that, put it down, and you can just get a bit of defenses. Next one is Smite. Now Smite is literally there just for a little bit of extra added damage. Now you don't, when you're doing a regular map, you necessarily don't need to turn this on or even just use it. All it means is that when you are in your map, let's say you get to the boss and you need a bit of damage, you literally just cast Smite once and you then gain a buff of added lightning damage for a few seconds. That few seconds should then be enough for you to kill the boss. Finally, Lightning Golem, just because it provides you with, again, increased attack and cast speed. We just want it for the attack speed because that's bonus. Next one they're running is with Berserk. Now Berserk provides you with increased damage. Now what it does is it provides you with increased rage effect. Now rage in itself, just because if you don't know what rage does, rage in itself, every single point of rage grants 1% more attack damage for yourself, which is obviously massive. Now if you have, let's say, I think the max that this build can run with, if I just run back to the POB, is 32. So with 32 rage, you then have 32% increased attack damage. Now if we get our calculator out, hold on, if if we get a calculator out and we do 32 times 59%, we then gain an additional potential of 18 rage. Okay, so we then go from 32, so we'll be gaining 32% increased attack damage, but then plus 18.8, so it's 32 plus 18.8, we then gain 50.8% increased attack damage for the moment in which Berserk is turned on. Now I have that linked with automation. Now you are gaining rage with every single enemy that you hit. Look, gain 3 rage when you hit an enemy. So if you bounce into a pack, before you know it, you're at 20-30 rage. Then Berserk will automatically cast because of automation. You then have 50% more damage instantly. Then your rage will you'll then lose your rage because it then loses 5 rage per second. And then as soon as it gets back to 0, you'll keep on flicking, boom, back up to 30. Automation kicks in, triggers it again. So it's just constantly giving you more damage as you're running around the map. Molten Shell, what that does is obviously run Molten Shell in the background. You can also run Vol Molten Shell as well if you want, and I have that on my skill bar here. So if you are about to jump into a big fight, you can pop Vol Molten Shell and it'll give you a bit of a boost for a couple seconds. Okay, around about 9 seconds. And finally, we are running with Defiance Banner. That again is automatically triggered because of automation. The Defiance Banner provides you with increased movement speed to you, and it also gives you chance to suppress spell damage, and it gives you it grants minus 12% damage from each damage type that you've suppressed. Now this is constantly on. It's on. It says its duration is 12 seconds, but it's being cast every couple seconds. So as you're running through the map and you're flicking, you'll be gaining valor. I think it's valor, yeah. And then automation kicks in. It will use all your valor, and then it will then give you increased movement speed. So obviously when you're running through the map, and it will give you a chance to suppress spell damage. All of them 3 are all automatic. You just have to turn it on. That's it. It's nice and easy, quality of life. Final one is Rage Support. Now the only reason that I have this linked, gives increased attack damage and attack speed when you have at least 10 rage, which is linked to Leap Slam. Faster attacks is linked to Leap Slam, and Frenzy is linked to Leap Slam. So as you Leap Slam, first of all you're gaining the bonus attack speed with this, and you're gaining attack speeds per frenzy charge, which is linked to that. So if you have 8 frenzy charges, then that's even faster, and it's then boosted off that by another 20% if you have 10 rage. So you are literally going to be rebouncing through your map so fast, okay, once you have 8 frenzy charges, and you are rocking. That is pretty much it. Now in terms of the gems which are not essential, and the gems which you could potentially change slightly, if you really wanted to, you could change the shield setup. So if you don't want to run with Sigil or Smite or Summon Lightning, you pick a different 3. It doesn't matter. I ran it just for the increased attack speed. I would say the Lightning Golem is a very nice 10% quality of life. The other 2, it's up to you. If you want to play around with them, if you want to put in a portal gem, do whatever you want. Okay? There's nothing that's essential. If you want to do a 2-link here of Leap Slam and faster attacks, and take out Rage and Frenzy and put some other 2-link in there, again, it's not essential. I just did it for a bit of quality of life. Okay? In terms of this 3 setup, I would say that is essential for the Marcon hit. It's very helpful. So what we'll do now is we will now go through the Ascendancy. So Ascendancy wise, we are obviously going Trickster. Now I took Polymath first, then Swift Killer for the frenzy charges, then Escape Artist, then Soul Drinker. Now as you can see here, I also have 1 step ahead lit up. That's because of the Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh. This is because 1 step ahead is 7 divine cheaper per duel than Polymath. Polymath is about 40 divine when I checked. 1 step ahead was about 32. So you're probably saving 7 to 8 divine per duel for going for 1 step ahead and taking Polymath. If you want to do it the other way around, go for it. It's up to you. But you will lose the 10% increased damage that is on there. If you take this instead and take this small node and take Polymath as your Forbidden Flame, you will not have this travel node, which means you lose 10% increased damage. I would rather have the 10% increased damage. Carrying on, Ascendancy wise, I am taking Soul of the Brine King for the stun and chance to avoid being frozen. The last thing you want is to be frozen when you are running with Flicker Strike, because it's the worst thing ever, and you are leeching, so the last thing you want to do is stop and be frozen. And I am taking Soul of Grathukul for the increased physical damage reduction, and enemies that hit you with attack speed, enemies that hit you with an attack have their attack speed reduced. So that is a nice little quality of life for you as well. So sometimes you get some Soul Eater juicy rares. As soon as they hit you, their damage attack speed is then reduced because of that. That is pretty much it, guys. There is nothing really else on this build. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you the other version, which is a very expensive version, but if you look at the tree, it's very, very similar. Very similar. The only thing he doesn't take this reservation up here. Okay? He doesn't take this calculation. He doesn't take the resourcefulness. He doesn't have all the tattoos in that I have. He puts his Light of Meaning Jewel in here. He takes this Mana Mastery. But if you look on the left hand side, if you look at his effective H pool, it is infinite. Now, however, look at his damage. It's 21 million. So, in one hand, in one scenario, you have my build, which is 139 million DPS and 312,000 effective H pool. Or, you could lose 110 million damage, but have an effective H pool of infinite. Which one would you rather have? Also, just to bear in mind as well, he runs with a necrotic armor, which is, if you just look at that chest, increased global defenses, chance to suppress, evasion rating, increased energy shield, and intelligence. And he then has max rolled 3% maximum cold resistance. That is exquisite. And he has the 10% elemental resistances. And he then has a heist orb for the increased explicit defense mod magnifiers, and it's all 6 white. Now this build I saw and I was like, wow, that chest in itself is nearly a mirror. So if you want to go down this route, by all means, but bear in mind, look at your damage. You've only got 21 million. So I'm going to give you this version. If you want to have a look at it, you're more than happy to. What I have done is I have taken some of the best bits from this and thrown it into the other one. So he is running with the Forbidden Flame here and the Forbidden Flesh, but what he's also running with here is if I remember rightly, he is running with an Ancestral Vision with the Corrupted Blood immunity, which when I checked last was 55 divines. Now that obviously gives you the chance to avoid elemental ailments. Now the way that we get avoid elemental ailments is on one of the flasks we are running with 54% chance to avoid being shocked with a 90% increased effect. That then brings us to the cap, and what we are then doing up here is we are then slotting in a Storm Shroud. That then provides you with the increase. Now the bad thing is that gives you positive lightning resistance. So what you need to make sure that you do is the ring that you get negates whatever value that is. Because if you're at 198%, you're not hitting max. You want to be hitting 200, negative 200. So ideally, you want to try and get that lightning resistance to be the lowest value as possible. So try and get it to like 10% max. Okay? Again, like I said, this is a build that is entirely up to you. This build is a couple mirrors, because he's also running with an Impossible Escape over here, and he's then running with Journey Tattoo of the Soul. Now he's not running with one. There's one. There's two. There's three. Those tattoos are 27 divine each. That's just for a tattoo. So that's nearly what? 90 divine for 3 tattoos. So he's kind of gone overboard on this, but overboard to the point of being infinite and having 21 million damage. He is 100 spell suppression, and he's not even block capped for spell block. But it's entirely up to you. Now, my build doesn't run with full suppression. Okay, you are only getting 8%, but you are running with max 65% block. You are leeching nearly 2000 energy shield on hit. You are also recovering energy shield when you block because of the shield. So you're recovering 2% of your armor every time you block. So if you have 84,000 armor, so calculator back out again, 84, let's do the value that's here, 84,295. You divide that by 100 and times it by 2, that's 840 energy shield. So every time you block, you will gain 840 energy shield. Okay, so you are gaining that from that. You are also down here gaining, I think there's another way that you could gain energy shield. You're also gaining energy shield on leech from the mark on hit. Leech is everywhere on the build, so once you're rocking and rolling in a map, you should be absolutely fine. I think like I said, I've only died from my own stupidity when I've been leap slamming, and when I was in the middle of building the build and I didn't have the damage, then I was dying. But now that I'm at this point, I'm not struggling. It's not an issue. So I will leave this build in the description. If you want to go through it, it's entirely up to you, but it is very expensive, so just bear that in mind. And that is basically it, guys. Apologies for the length of the video, but I have been going through a lot of stuff with this build. I am still in the middle of compiling a lot of mine. Obviously, I've still got the odd gem to level up to 21. I'm still missing a mage blood, and then that's it. Pretty much build is done. Obviously, if you do play this build and you enjoy it, and it is something that obviously you manage to do content with, I've not been doing bosses with it. I've been mainly doing mapping with it, and I've been screaming through maps very, very fast. So if this is a build that you are wanting to do and you do have the budget to do it, then good luck and have fun. Until the next video, guys, thank you for watching. Go subscribe, don't forget, if you are still watching, and stay sane.